We're looking for people who are committed to delivering genuine partnerships with the council. That for us, it's a transactional relationship is absolutely essential. It's got to be about what people can bring to the table as well as what people want. And clearly, we've set out in our forward plan and our corporate plan, what our vision is for Greenwich, and that builds on all that stuff I was talking about in terms of equality, carbon neutrality, diversity, and I guess in terms of the relationships that have gone really well, I think that they're relationships where you can have honest conversations and recognize that not everything is going to go well all the time. And for me, it's kind of about what people do when their backs are up against the wall and when everyone has to kind of move a bit that I think have been the most successful. And I think if I looked and I mean I've mentioned Peabody, so I sort of use them again, but I think Peabody would hopefully say that I've been a strong ambassador of the work that they've done. I've not just sort of, kind of sat and looked at a few planning documents. I've been down, met residents, met their teams, been on site, opened some of our new affordable homes, as well as supported community events that they have delivered in Thamesmead. So, I think partnership for me is very much about being visible together. And I'd hope really that anyone who wants to come in can work in that vein. I genuinely think if people are coming to the table with kind of zero as a number, then don't come to the table. I just think we've crossed that Rubicon really of acceptability or not, and circumstances have completely changed. I think we're also really interested in talking to people who are thinking about the place rather than just the product. And also in sort of thinking about the place, what I would say is, when you're invested in a borough like Greenwich, well, the council's been here, a lot longer than many investors. So we do actually know what we're talking about. And that's kind of funny thing to say, but if I had a pound for every minute and I've gone into a presentation and seen a happy little person on a bike and no cars on the road, I'd be a very rich man. But actually, I kind of know, how we want the riverfront to kind of join up. I know about the principles that we want to bring to those developments. I know who we need to talk to in terms of, community engagement at an early stage. So, let's make sure, I think, that people are coming into these conversations with an open mind, because I think where people have come into Greenwich with an open mind, we've genuinely been able to help. To take one example, which is just about to go into, where's awaiting planning permission, is Pocket. Now, actually, Pocket is obviously a product that's now featured across the London landscape. And I was really struck actually when I went to visit a scheme in Lewisham. I think Pocket would say for them it had been quite hard to get through the door, to make conversations and connections with officers who genuinely understood what they were trying to do. And actually, a lot of cynicism, I think, probably on officer side initially about whether or not this was a decent product, whether it was truly affordable housing. Quite strange, really, considering just how well embedded they are with the GLA and the work that they were doing. And I went down with one of my officers to look at the Lewisham scheme, and I was really blown away by the sort of public realm outside. It was of a high quality. It fitted in with the existing neighbourhood, and we went into one of the properties, and the officer said, "It's a bit pokey." And I thought, this isn't much bigger than my flat, actually. I'm not quite sure I agree. And then we sort of had a look around, and then the officer said, "Well, where would I put all of my records?" At which point I held up my phone and said, "They're all on there." And I thought it really struck me as, it wasn't about, you know, people being difficult. It was absolutely about lived experience.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, for me as a younger Londoner, growing up, with kind of, mates, shared houses, multiple moves, multiple landlord grief, actually, you know, if I'd have been able to buy a pocket home, as a young Londoner in my 20s, former teacher, I'd have bit my hand off, in order to do that. But I didn't really understand what the product was, or how to access it. But that sort of, I suppose, institutional resistance then to potentially how people are living their lives, to understanding how other Londoners are living their lives, really struck me as something that had to be addressed. And I think I'd be amiss if I didn't mention Berkeley Homes here, because I think Berkeley's, in terms of what they've achieved in Woolwich and Kidbrooke, actually. I mean, I was born on the Ferry Estate and spent an early part of my life there, so I know it quite well. Those are great places. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And certainly, I think in the Arsenal, having used the heritage and the history of those buildings to create a new community is really incredible. And certainly, it isn't a series of large, tall, seamless, faceless buildings. Those heritage assets have been brought back to life. And the thing I do really appreciate about Barclays is it's a hugely sad time, given that we lost Tony Pidgley in the middle of all of this. Is the thing I always appreciated as a leader was you could come in and have a row with Tony and know exactly where you were, and actually then you'd kind of move on. But actually, that sort of openness, honesty, I think, in terms of having those conversations, and I think for all the criticism that's ever levelled at Barclays, I think Tony was probably one of the strongest people in the industry who actually stood up and said, "I do want to build communities and places here. I'm not just interested in delivering a load of flats." And certainly, if you look at Sutcliffe Park, for example, I grew up around Sutcliffe Park. It was an endless piece of grass with a grey path that went around it in an almost circular fashion. It isn't now. Now that partnership with the Environment Agency, with London Wildlife Trust and others, has created an absolutely beating heart in the middle of that community. And the thing I most love about running around there, and I do a fair bit of running, is there's a place you can stand in the middle of Sutcliffe Park, this sort of wetland walk, and you'd have no idea that you're in London. Like that, and I think that is absolutely phenomenal, really.
One other sort of level of partnerships I'd like to ask you about. You've mentioned Zone 1 a lot, and obviously there's a close relationship between Greenwich and Central London. Also in Thamesmead, you're in a partnership with Bexley, your neighbour, and you've got a role in London councils as well, an important role, and are working with councils across the city. So how do you see partnership with other local authorities in helping you to deliver the range of housing and the quantity of housing and the excellence of places and the growth and levelling off the inequalities that you're seeking?
So for me, I think partnership is absolutely vital, whether that's at that kind of local level in borough, across borough boundaries, and more broadly at the sub-region. And the interesting stuff, one of the interesting things I'm doing at the moment, I should say, is working with Newham and chairing that group, which is about bringing forward the right option for the DLR alongside kind of other people, TfL, the interested developers in the room, to make sure that we do genuinely get the DLR delivered. Because I think you'd have seen from all the stuff around TfL and the commitments and changes that they've had to make, the DLR has actually made it above all of that noise, and we're still very much progressing. And I think that is testament really to all of the work that's gone in from Greenwich, Newham, Peabody over the years, to be real champions and say, actually, this is something that can be delivered, that would ultimately lead to more homes, but also address an injustice. So actually, SE28, which is the Thamesmead postcode, is the only postcode in London that does not have a fixed railway station of some kind in it. And I think that kind of tells you everything that you need to know about the story of Thamesmead over many years, and why repeated regeneration schemes have just absolutely failed to work. And that ability to actually travel to jobs, to get out, to connect, to bring people in, I think is absolutely critical, really. So I'm really proud of that work that we're doing. And obviously, because Thamesmead does straddle the borough boundary, it's really important that we work with Bexley in a constructive way, even as councils which are run by two different parties of political persuasion, to kind of keep that focus on the residents and moving forward and making sure that we're all doing our bit to improve the area.
Could you imagine working with another borough or a group of boroughs to pool land assets, for example, in order to support housing development? And the reason for that question stems from a webinar I was chairing this morning, where we were talking about modern methods of construction, and the supply side of that was we need a big pipeline in order to deliver real quality buildings at real pace off-site, with offsite manufacturing capacity. Can you work with other boroughs in that level of closeness, so that you could pool land assets and aggregate demand for housing?
I think that's a bit more challenging, to be honest with you. And I suppose my reason for saying that is, when we'd gone for a period a few years ago when everyone thought that shared services was the answer to efficiencies in local government, and we could all get rid of chief execs and have different systems, and all the usual rubbish that people kind of spout out. And what that really, I suppose, kind of taught me, and we have all of our council housing stock, 21,000 properties in-house. They're not in an Almo. We are the direct relationship, I suppose, is that it's really, really important for councils to keep their focus principally on their place and their residents. And we have real challenges around temporary accommodation, for example, where people have to move out of borough. That's really difficult in terms of their support systems. So I suppose, it feels to me that, I'd absolutely love, and I'd have no problems, I think, working, say, with Lewisham as an example. But I guess actually I still think that you'd then come up against some of those challenges around, kind of who's moving in, where are they coming from, off of who's waiting. It's not without its issues. And it's, the hard thing, to be honest with you, is that those sort of problems shouldn't be insurmountable. I totally get that. But in terms of core business and what we're absolutely doing and being driven to do every day, it's probably not that.